Do, 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 do. Welcome to the Friends with Benefits podcast, a business podcast about revenue-generating partnerships, not a podcast about business time with friends. We're your co-hosting couple. I'm Jason.
And I'm Sam. Welcome to the show, friends.
Welcome back to the show, friends. We are back after taking a brief week off. I think we all just kind of needed a break from all the travels that we've been doing. I was at Inbound for a whole week, and Sam, you were at a little conference called Dreamforce. Good time.
It was tiny. Yeah. It was fun,
a little
though.
bit of people there. It's funny how conferences can be so exhausting.
Yeah.
Especially those big ones. Inbound was my first Inbound, and man, that was an amazing time, and so many new people to meet as I'm new to the HubSpot ecosystem, and I was like a kid in a candy shop, so more than exhausted coming back. And then Dreamforce for you, so needed a break, but we're back, and we've got a really spectacular guest today. I actually listened to a few of her previous podcasts that she's been on in the past, and gotta say I'm very excited about this conversation. Sam, tell us what we've got.
Hey, everybody. We're glad to be back. We have Jill Dignan here with us today, and we're so excited. Jill and I actually saw each other last week in person at Dreamforce, yes, which is rare, but very fun. Just a quick background on Jill. She is the Chief Growth Officer at V2, who is a top Salesforce consultancy. She stumbled into the Salesforce ecosystem and has spent the last several years becoming customer obsessed and helping others fall in love with Salesforce too. I love that. She started as a consultant and then moved into the operations side of the business and is now the Chief Growth Officer. So we're going to talk about kind of what that journey looked like. But she's been responsible for taking V2 from more of a traditional sales model to one that scales with partnerships, which is why we're all here. She's a mom. She lives in New Hampshire. And from my personal opinion and many others, she's a powerhouse woman in the partner space. So welcome, Jill. We're so thrilled to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. I know we're chatting beforehand and talking a little bit about all the good things you guys are doing with this podcast. So super stoked to be here and excited for the conversation.
Yes, it's going to be great. And I was kind of just chuckling to myself that say you stumbled into the Salesforce ecosystem. And I think it's funny is I feel like we've all kind of stumbled into partnerships, that those of us that have been in it for a while, it's like we've been in it for a few years here. I'm sure you have, but like those who've gotten into partnerships, we've just kind of like stumbled into this wonderful world of ecosystems, partnerships, and stuff like that. So it's fun to see people like yourself join us and getting to meet the great folks in partnerships these days.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's been a wonderful road and an interesting journey getting here. And I know from talking to a lot of other folks in this world, in this ecosystem, everyone's coming from really different, diverse backgrounds. And I don't know how many people are, going into school and coming out in their careers and saying, I want to be a partnerships person. I want to go into alliances. So it's just really interesting to see all the different backgrounds and perspectives that people are bringing. And that's why I'm excited to chat and also continue to tune in to episodes after today.
Yeah. Hopefully we're the place to get your MBA in partnerships and relationships. Stanford's not quite, supplying that yet.
Love that.
So I did have a chance to listen to a couple of your podcasts. I like to do a little bit of research before we interview somebody, and stumbled across a few good ones and a few good articles. And you went down this track on one of your interviews around empathy, and that's a big one for us here. Vulnerability, relationships, empathy, the things that make them work. And you said something that really stood out to me. Said you can't have empathy without action.
Mm-hmm.
I love that line. I'm actually gonna write that down and make it clear and plain everywhere I go. It's active and visible. Can you break that down for me a little bit and kind of maybe get into a little bit of what empathy in business partnerships looks like?
Yeah, it's definitely a big question, and it's interesting because when I was on that podcast, I was actually in a little bit of a different role here at V2. It was when I was in my COO role, and I was overseeing our delivery organization, our IT and operations globally, as well as talent. So talent ultimately rolled up into me, and we did a lot of, strategy around our recruiting practices, our, talent management and retention and management trainings and things like that for our team as we were continuing to scale. And so empathy and the concept of that kind of traversing not just what we were doing on the talent side, but how we were working with clients from a consulting delivery perspective really became an important topic. And something, we really tried to figure out, is this something that can be taught? Is it something that just people have and we have to hire for? If people do have it, how do we make them more aware of how to bring empathy into consulting conversations and even partnership conversations, working with Salesforce from a delivery perspective? So, I think on the partnership side, it's really about going back to kind of the name of your podcast, Friends with Benefits, and emphasis on the friends, right? The benefits are great if they come with it, but you got to focus on the friend part first. And thinking about that in business, it's really about opening yourself up, coming into conversations in an authentic way, trying to understand the person that's on the other side and what's important to them, and recognizing they're a whole person as well, besides what they're just bringing into a Zoom screen, right? They're people living in cities, in rural areas. They've got family. They may have kids. They may be married. They may be divorced. They may be, juggling a lot of things outside of work, and work is just one piece of who they are. And I think reminding yourself of that and really being, active, selfless, vulnerable, use that word earlier, coming into those conversations is really important to building relationships and building trust. Every good relationship is built on trust. So I think that all starts with empathy.
I think that's great, and I love that. It's a good reminder, to set your mindset when you're coming to work, of who you are and what you're doing here, and how you're working with other people and managing relationships. I am curious though, did you find that you were able to train people to be more empathetic? Because if their authentic self is not, practicing empathy, like how can you learn that?
Yeah, well, so I definitely struggle to pick a side on this debate. I waffle quite a bit. I'm definitely somebody who, if we could get into debates around religion or politics or any sorts of those things we won't be talking about today, I can go in with an open mind and be convinced if someone can debate or argue something really well. So the positive, optimistic side of me wants to think that just like anything else in life, people can learn. They can. It may be hard to teach, but people can learn from experiences that they go through, right? So teaching something versus someone learning it on their own over time through their own evolution and maturation, I think is possible. I've been reading a lot about, not to go completely off topic, but reading a lot and listening to a lot of podcasts around Buddhism and meditation lately. And there's this concept that, love and empathy and things like that can be taught. But it's taught through, introspection and reflection, and it's intrinsic. So I do think people can learn it, but if you're an organization that's thinking that you can train people to become more empathetic, I do kind of fall in more of the pessimistic camp on that and say, no, you've got to really hire for it. And if people are going to become more empathetic over time, it's going to be on their own journey, so to speak.
Yeah.
I don't know what your thoughts on that are, if that's too far out there or.
I think it can be learned, and I think starting off, you can teach somebody to listen, right? And I think in order to really be actively empathetic, it has to start with listening. And the more you listen, the more you hear people, and the more you get to hear kind of their side versus your side. And I think that begins to kind of break down this barrier that we have that we don't perceive the way others do. But when we start to listen more, we can actually begin to perceive more from the other side. I think that's more the
Mhm.
problem, more the issue is not thinking about the other person and being, to your point, like selfless. Those that,
Yeah.
maybe we're a little more selfish. If we're not practicing or working with empathy, we don't understand the EQ behind it. And, the more we stop, listen, and acknowledge and observe others, I think the more that we can learn empathy and take that on. But if it's not something that you actively practice every day, it's something that you've got to start to practice and, you know, mindfully go into.
Yeah, and I
Absolutely.
think it starts too with like it's so counterintuitive to business because we're all like, let's grow, let's grow, let's grow, let's get new customers, but especially from the partnership perspective, and Jill too, from the consultancy perspective, like no wonder you're looking to hire for this, because the end goal for us as partner professionals should be what's in it for them and how can I make them
Yeah.
successful. And if you can start from that frame of mind, you're going to be successful too, because people are going to we've talked about it a lot on this podcast, law of reciprocity. They're going to return that value back to you. But it's definitely, I agree completely. You have to want to learn it. It's not something that you can just like take a take a course on and check that box and good to
Right.
go. I'm empathetic now.
There's a book by Donald Miller about
Mm.
the story brand. I don't know if you've read that. And I was
We
saying I
are huge
read it.
fans.
Okay. So I have not read this book. My husband has, and he kind of got me to go and research it. And so I've read up a lot about the framework of story brand and the concept of that, and just really, not competing for the role of hero, right? And
Yeah.
it is something that requires a lot of awareness day to day. I mean, for me, it's a daily struggle. It's a daily struggle because I'm super competitive and I like to win, and I'm super revenue focused. And so, especially with, challenges that we're all facing as partners right now, we've had a great year, but there's a lot of pressure, right? And there's a lot of uncertainty. And so I think trying to keep that at the forefront of everything that you're doing, which is I'm not the hero. This is not about me. This is not about our business. This is about the partnership. And this is about how can I help? How can I come into a conversation and be helpful to our counterparts at Salesforce? It's a daily struggle, right? It's a daily thing that you've got to kind of
Yeah.
gear up in your mind and kind of put on this alter ego and say, I'm going in and, I'm have to remind myself I'm not the hero in this story. They're the
You're
protagonist. I'm like somebody else. I'm here to like help them, right? It's
you're
like,
the guide in in that context of story brand, right? If you think about, stories, Luke Skywalker is the
yes,
hero and Yoda is the guide, and but really Yoda is the real hero that pushes and guides everybody to be their best, right? And
yeah, I was
that's
thinking
what
like
you're doing
Lord of
behind the
the Rings
scenes.
with Frodo and Sam. Like we as the partner, like we're Sam and Salesforce is Frodo, and we're helping them get through their journey. And if we can learn and grow and get there together, all the better. But it doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah.
I'm
And
going to pitch this to Salesforce. I mean, I've already got the Sam part down. They just need to go by Frodo now.
You're halfway there.
So you kind of touched on this, but how does one actively show empathy with a giant partner like Salesforce? And then how, on the flip side, have you received empathy from them?
That's a great question. Yeah, showing empathy with Salesforce and being, a smaller partner. I think that's actually been it's been one of our biggest challenges and things to overcome because we are a small partner. We're under 100 people. We're continuing to grow and hire, which is really exciting. But we are oftentimes competing with the GSIs in the ecosystem. We predominantly work with high growth enterprise and global customers. So, we're working with, the Forbes of the world and the Clear Channels of the world, and these really, really big companies that have alternative partners that they could work with. And we only have so many resources and budget that we can invest in partnerships. And I'm continuing to work to try to grow that budget going into next year. But we have to get creative, and we can't travel constantly. We can't put on these big events. We can't just do the whole wining dining thing. So oftentimes it's really about figuring out where to spend our energy, with what people, with what teams, and then making sure that when we are investing that time, that it's meaningful, and that there is a personal aspect to it, and trying to figure out how to optimize the energy and investments that we do have on the partnership side. So we do a lot of enablement. That's kind of one of our ways of giving back to Salesforce, right? We work with customers that have a lot of complexity and complex needs. We're working to pitch ultimately, big solutions, multi-cloud solutions, transformation projects. Of course, we do niche implementations and things like that as well. But a lot of the stuff we do, there's a big consulting flair. We're consultants first, technologists second. And so there's just this inherent complexity that we're always navigating. Salesforce is navigating that with us. And we know that they're not living in the same world we're living in every day. They're not living in a consulting bubble and going really deep with industry. So we know that one of the things we can offer is education, right? Like we're going to come in and we're going to share our insights on what's going on in media or comms or retail media. And, no stupid questions. Anybody can ask whatever they want. We can provide enablement around any topic, whether it's, what's most important to a chief revenue officer of an ad sales organization, or, when we're looking at a complex solution like Media Cloud or personalization or MuleSoft or now Data Cloud. What does that actually mean for folks that we're engaging with at these organizations? And so that's kind of our way of showing empathy, is like, we get it. Being a rep at Salesforce is tough. It's especially hard right now. There's turnover of accounts every single year. And so they've only got so much runway to really build relationships with those accounts. And there's a lot of shifting, and they need to be able to lean on somebody internally or externally through partners to help them along that journey. And that's really where we try to lean in and be, active, so to speak, with taking that empathetic approach.
Man, for anybody who's trying to get in the Salesforce ecosystem, like, rewind that and listen to it again, because
Absolutely.
that was so spot on. And I think that many people, call it Salesforce, any of the large cloud ecosystems, you go partner with them and you're like, well, they're the expert. I'm a fly on the wall. I just gotta, like, staying with the fly analogy, be annoying and like get their attention. And that has the complete opposite effect. Like, I was just having this conversation with somebody the other day, and they were being complimentary of us at PFL, in that, like, we can, like, let down our guard and be cool people to work with because we have more at bats, because we're out there, like, making these relationships day in and day out. And it's not like we know one RVP, we're going to annoy the heck out of them until they, like, bring us into their book of business. That's not the game. The game is to, like, be consistent, add value every time. And to your point, these Salesforce sellers need help. They need to know what's going on in the industry. Like, and if you can provide that value and just be available, be a partner, a true partner, that's going to come back in multiples for you.
Absolutely. It's the value first approach, right? Value breeds trust. Trust creates relationships. You take that mindset and you make it valuable to them, and you're providing value, outside of what you're committed to already. Then, like, they're going to start to notice you, right? And I wrote this down. I think it's worth calling out, and really, I think, personifies like what we do in partnerships. That you said, make the time meaningful with a personal aspect. Like that. That's a really, really good summarization of like building purpose-built relationships, right? Make it worthwhile, make it meaningful, make it valuable, but don't forget the personal aspect and the person behind the conversation you're having. So like love that. I do have a sort of a follow up question to that. So it obviously takes time to build these relationships, especially with someone like Salesforce. And I think Jill, you and Sam are probably two of the best at this, at getting those relationships, and it's a very hard one to crack. So if you can recall, with all these software years behind us, like as you were getting started at V2, like where did you start in building those relationships, and what did you find was effective in the early days?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's probably very different than a lot of other partners. Very non-traditional path, both for the company and for my role in all of it. We've been a partner for almost 18 years now, and a
Wow.
boutique during all those years, of course, and we still are. But we really started, growing from around the 20 person mark for many of those years, just a couple years ago. So we shot up from 20 to close to 100 very, very quickly. Really started investing back in the business. We're unique in that being a 100 person firm and not having the PE backing and being completely bootstrapped by our founders is a differentiator for us. And it gives us a lot of flexibility to be creative and do things differently, which I always appreciate. But many of those years, and even throughout our growth, a lot of our deals were brought in through direct, as many companies start out in the Salesforce ecosystem. And we were sort of at a crossroads, I would say, at the end of 2021. We were growing. My CEO, who had been leading sales on the direct side for many, many years, was getting ready to go on sabbatical and had asked me to take on this tour of duty, moving from more the consulting side and the COO role to overseeing sales and helping scale a sales team while he was on sabbatical. And I had no sales background other than working with customers and helping, work to sort of upsell and like increase their Salesforce investment and ROI on that investment. But I was not a salesperson by trade. I was concerned because I didn't have the relationships at the level that he did as sort of a head of sales for many, many years. And I knew that if I relied purely on a direct strategy, we were never going to hit our number. So a lot of my focus stepping into the role was really taking a look at all of my resources. One of those being Salesforce and the Salesforce partnership. And up until that point, again, many years of the business, we had been a registered partner of Salesforce. We definitely kept them apprised of deals that we were working on. We were opportunistic. We had relationships that bore fruit, and we were able to bring in some deals through Salesforce over the years. But the vast majority of the work we were doing, the revenue, was direct. And so I kind of saw it as we have this untapped, partnership that we really need to figure out. We've got to come up with a strategy. We've got to figure out the tactics. We've got to find a way to drive more through that channel relationship. And what does that really look like? And how do we do it? How do we do it well? And how do we then scale it? Because I'm one person, we don't have the budget right now for an alliance manager, alliance director. So I worked, basically from January of 2022 through last year to build up that partnership. And we went from, honestly, from a reporting standpoint, zero leads coming in through the channel consistently to about 40 to 50 per month by September of last year. So about a year ago at this time. And it was all through just, agile, scrappy, building relationships in a lot of the traditional ways, making sure that we were staying laser focused and not going too far and too wide. And I can definitely share a little bit more about that. But we're really, from an alliance standpoint, we're really just about, even though we're an 18-year partner, we're about 2 years into having a formal alliance strategy. And then this year, just for context, our CEO came back from his sabbatical and took over sales again. And I moved into a role where I get to focus on partnerships full time as well as marketing. And it's been great. And now we've just opened up budget for an alliance manager who will come in and report to me. So we're really growing the alliance side of the business, but really did not have, I'll call it investment in that until last year.
So
I am blown away by those numbers. That's
what I was
crazy.
about to ask.
That was our best month. Yeah, that was our best month last year.
So you did that in basically like 1 year, going from 0 leads to 40 or 50 a month, and now 2 years down, you've got the formal strategy established.
Absolutely. Yeah. And those are all sizable, not necessarily all qualified, right? But sizable deals with customers, mostly in our wheelhouse. This year's been a little bit different, but our numbers have been really strong. And we're doubling down, but it's a lot of trial and error too, because I'm new to this, our company is new to this. And like I said earlier, it's a lot of thinking outside the box and how can we do things differently and stand out. We haven't nailed it. I know for a fact there's way more that we could be doing, even with the budget that we have, right? Always, money can kind of heal everything. If we get more budget and more people and more, more boots on the ground, we can do more. But even with what we're investing right now, I know we can do more, but it's a lot of trying different things out and seeing what works and then doubling down on that.
Yeah. So as far as like standing out and doing things differently, like what are some of the things you feel like you did differently versus what others are doing?
Yeah, and I'm always happy to share share things like this because I think everybody's trying to figure it out, and I think there's everyone needs to experiment and try different things that are going to work for their business. For us, as I mentioned earlier, focusing on education and enablement with the core sales teams has been huge. I think also investing time with the sales engineering teams at Salesforce. So I think oftentimes we focus on core sales, we focus on co-prime relationships that we want to build, right? Focus on the MuleSoft side or the Tableau side. But the SE teams have been phenomenal partners and a great way to sort of like Trojan horse into opportunities, right? Because if they trust us, these are some of the smartest people, on the deal team, right? Are the SEs. And if we've got their trust from a technology standpoint, they're going to raise their hand and say, I know a partner that we should be talking to here. So that's been a strategy that's worked really well for us. I think also having a healthy balance across the different role levels has been important because the higher up that you go, while it's important to know those people, build relationships with them, we've found a lot more success really at the RVP level and working with AEs and literally building relationships brick by brick, one by one, and then operationalizing it, which has been really helpful as well.
Man, I couldn't agree more with everything you just said. We've seen the same thing from the SEs. Like that's where the magic happens for sure.
I was chuckling because I've heard you talk about that so many times. I'm like, that must be the magic sauce there.
I just got so happy hearing you because I was like, yay, that's what we're doing too. And the other thing too, I agree completely with like the higher ups. And there's some really interesting titles at Salesforce. It takes a while to like figure out who goes where and who does what. But I think the one thing that could come from those larger, higher up relationships is getting in the right room sometimes. And it's important to have those relationships just for that alone. Okay. So I am really nerdy about this and I'm really excited to talk to you about this. You've mentioned this a few times, operationalizing your program. So Can you dive into that? Because I know Jason and I have a lot of questions.
Yeah. We're both very nerdy in this regard. So let's get into the good stuff.
Oh, I'm so excited to hear. I'm curious what you guys are doing and what you've kind of geeked out on from like a tech and process standpoint. So let's go.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, I mean, I'll kick it off here in terms of like, especially in the Salesforce ecosystem, there's a ton of technology out here that's helping partner people like manage relationships, get the sales teams more involved. But Salesforce isn't bought onto them yet. And it might be a while before they are. And so for me personally, we had to build like grassroots within our Salesforce system of like how to track
Mhm.
relationships, how to track what accounts they own, where they are in pipe. And it's been a game changer for us. But how are you guys managing that?
Yeah, the bulk of it is in Salesforce. We don't have PRM or any sort of fancy SKU or anything like that. We're using Sales Cloud, and we have some other things we've added onto it for both our sales team and alliance side, as well as our delivery folks. But Salesforce, being a Salesforce partner, we've used Salesforce for many years, and it's really operationalizing as much as possible within that platform, and knowing that our database is sort of gold, right? That every way that we track the relationships, the hierarchies, when there's account turnover at the beginning of the Salesforce fiscal year in February, figuring out how to keep track of all the reporting structures and all the accounts that people are mapped to, and staying on top of that. So we have a process internally for how we capture that data, and we've got someone on the operations side who helps maintain the database. And it's big influx beginning of year, as I said, but then a lot of maintenance throughout. And we do tracking of the level of relationship, like have we ever met with them, have we been lightly engaged, have we been heavily engaged. We also keep track of almost like a NPS. We don't do any formal surveys or anything like that to Salesforce right now, but we keep track of sort of our perceived score that they would give us, right? Are they a detractor? Are they a fan? Are they a super fan? And so we look at all of that data to really figure out where we should be spending energy. And we're working with CRM analytics right now to build out more of that heat mapping. That's a project that's in progress that I'm hoping to have launched before next year, so we can have a visual heat map of sort of our red and green relationships and where to spend the time. I'm so curious if at PFL, if you guys have already matured something like that with some, really nice dashboards that truly drive your day. We're not quite there yet, but that's the vision.
I freaking love this conversation. Yeah, no, we're like in a similar boat. So we have it tracking like we have a funnel essentially of our Salesforce relationships. And similar, it's like engaged. So they know who we are. We've maybe enabled them. And then it goes all the way to matured of they've given us multiple intros and we're like really, tight with these AEs. And then we have a marketing team that's actively talking to them based on where they're at in that funnel and on which industry they fall into. So to your point, like this was a hard learning curve for us, but as a horizontal partner, you have to be more specific with your messaging. And not only does that go to industry, but that also goes to that personal relationship. This is where marketing and partnerships, I think, need to combine, because if you're putting people in a nurture stream and it's like, great to see you at Dreamforce, loved our conversation, it's like, we didn't talk at Dreamforce. Like, there goes your relationship. It's really
Yeah,
that simple. And so you have to be very clear and articulate on your personal relationships and maintain them. We still are learning. We still have a lot to go. So we should just like, maybe we should look under the hood together and compare notes after this.
absolutely. Yeah. I'm always curious to learn what other people are doing. And there's some things that we still haven't fully solved for, right? Which, as an example, it's with the account changes that happen every single year,
Mm-hmm.
right? You want to keep track of the history. But as we're learning, okay, this rep that we worked with last year is now aligned to a completely different set of accounts. We're going to continue to maintain that relationship. We switch things over in our database. And then it becomes tricky because we want to go back to accounts they may have been assigned to the year before. We're working with a new rep, and we have lost some of that context, and then we're digging through to figure that out. So ideally we'd be able to know, okay, this is their focus this year, this is what they were on last year, so we can reference that. I think that a lot of the historical stuff has been challenging for us. And then really, how quickly can we bring our sales team up to speed so they can have relevant conversations without having to dig too much into the database to get that information. So we're really, I think we've got the architecture and the infrastructure and the object relationship to kind of keep track of everything. But now it's really about, okay, how do we take that? We're doing a great job tracking it. It's all up to date. It looks great. We use it daily, but how do we make it an easier workflow, right? How can I come in and know this is where I'm going to spend energy this month? How can our sellers come in and have a dashboard or a view that helps them direct how, where, why, when they're going to spend energy?
Exactly.
And that's kind of that level of maturity we're starting to get to right now, which is really exciting.
It's
Yeah.
so
And
exciting. Go
yeah,
ahead.
absolutely. And that piece of it is like really starting to enable and push that data into your field team. This has always been like kind of my secret sauce. I'm
Mm-hmm.
always the ISV, partnering with other ISVs or agencies, and haven't really built the big, Salesforce partnership like you guys have. So I'm working with like an army of other partners and trying to bring my field team into the mix and pushing these workflows, data, and enablement processes so that they can take the action on themselves. Right. That's the way I've scaled the last two programs, is getting the sales team involved in the data, showing them who the partners are, which ones to work with, how to do this, and how to begin to prioritize the accounts and prospecting into the partners' customer base. And once we've done that, we've 3, 4, 5x the last couple of programs, and
Yeah.
that's really kind of where you begin to scale.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's where the magic happens too. And there is like a going full circle back to our like empathy conversation at the beginning. It's how do you draw that bridge from like data in Salesforce if Salesforce AE owns this account to salesperson. And that's not just like an email of like, hey, I know you own this account. Let's get together and talk about it. How do we as partner people help bridge that gap from a personal level to, bring the whole company along and make this a flywheel of partnership? And I think
Yeah.
we could have a whole nother podcast on that alone.
I love that concept of the flywheel, Sam, and that you're like nailing like where my brain is right now and what I'm focused on, because we've got this small but mighty go-to-market team. And when I think about go-to-market, it's our sales team, it's our alliance side, which is me, hopefully one other person soon, and then our marketing, which sits under me. And we're this really small team, and we're meeting and we're working together very collaboratively, and everything is very fluid, as you would imagine with a boutique where we all have to wear different hats, so everybody has to
Mhm.
know what's going on. But that concept of the flywheel, we haven't really gotten that going. It's like we're putting the pieces in place right now to build that, but we haven't gotten the flywheel going with marketing. We started to do some things, and then on the sales side, it's not. It's very rigid right now, and I'm hoping, and what we're building towards. I'd love to learn more about what you've done and how you've been successful with this. Is how do you, if you've built it, then how do you get it moving, and what are some
Yeah.
tactics that you can do to get things moving more fluidly? And then, as you said, Jason, like 2x, 3x, 5x what you're doing, because everyone's marching in the same direction at the same speed.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like what we preach here at Reveal around like the Nearbound strategy, right? Your field teams have the inbound strategy, the outbound strategy, but those teams don't really have a partner strategy, which so to now we're bringing to market, building out a Nearbound strategy and how you build effective campaigns around the partner data, the partner motion, and getting the marketing and sales teams fully engaged and involved and having them prioritize partners as a strategic offering and campaign to what we can bring to our database,
Mm-hmm.
right? So how does marketing, run nearbound campaigns? How does sales, run their nearbound efforts, outbounding with Nearbound sort of meta thing, and being able to generate a third of all revenue, through inbound, third of revenue through outbound, third of revenue through Nearbound, and really beginning to, take you guys' word to create that flywheel and begin to find new streams and avenues of revenue.
It's so timely too. I mean, like I said, Jill and I were at Dreamforce last week. It's like data, 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 AI, but then how do you add that element of trust and humanization to it? And that's the conversation here. Like, I think partnerships is at a really exciting time because we're starting to have data and we're starting to be able to operationalize it, but we can't lose the foundation of what partnerships is, which is people doing business with people. And that's the gray area right now, but I think it's really, really an exciting time. So speaking of people to people, Jill, I read an article that you posted 3 years ago in 2020. And it's so dang good. It's what people in their 20s should do to get ahead in their career. And I think it's still relevant for people that are well into their career. But you talked a lot about mentors.
Mm-hmm.
Do you personally have mentors, and how have you gone about finding them?
Yeah, it's a great question. I have a number of mentors in different walks of life and in different places. I mean, our leadership team here, we all lean on each other. There's four of us, our CEO, our COO, and our chief experience officer, and we all lean on each other at different times. And I find ways to leverage all of them as mentors, and I hope that I can be that for them when things come up. Even folks at Salesforce, there's a couple people that I've worked with, one who's actually moved on to a different company, but meeting people through the partner ecosystem is really interesting because you can find those people that help you through challenging times at work, right? And challenging situations. And there's no shortage. I mean, there's a lot of rosy aspects to partnership management, but there's also things that we have to navigate, like conflict, and when other partners get involved, and issues around pricing, right, where we're trying to scope with integrity and put a price in front of a customer that makes sense for what they need, and we're getting undercut by another partner because they don't have the industry or cloud background to scope it, and we know that the customer is going to end up getting change ordered to death, and we're like, hey, we're telling you this is what it's going to cost, and we know we're not going to give you a change order, but we get that pressure back from Salesforce, right? So we're always navigating these challenging situations, and I think that's where mentors, and especially folks that know the world that you're living in, can be so valuable. So I've got a number of folks that I lean on in my personal life, in my work life, people outside of V2 that have been incredible mentors for me. Brandon, who Sam, I think he and I have worked together for a long time, and I look to him for mentorship on different things, and I think hopefully he does to me as well. So and I would also say, like, I'm sort of a student of like studying people, and I listen to a lot of podcasts. I read a lot of books just about, peak performers. I love autobiographies. I love learning about, how different people have overcome obstacles in their life or line of work. I actually started reading on the way out to Dreamforce this book called Hidden Genius. I don't know if you've heard of it, but this woman, I'm going to botch her name, Paulina Pomplanova. I don't know. You can check that. She used to work for Fortune magazine, and then she started this website called The Profile, and she essentially looks at peak performers, very similar to like a Tim Ferriss, but she's got a journalism background, and she'll do these write-ups on different peak performers. And so I think even when you're lacking a mentor, right? If you're lacking someone that you can say, okay, this is going to be like my person that I'm going to learn from, there's a lot that you can do, media that you can digest to learn more about people and kind of align yourself and ask yourself, what's the type of person or professional that I want to be? And try to understand what they do and emulate that. And so I think it's amazing that we live in the world that we do now and the technology that's available to us, because you can seek out mentors that maybe you don't even meet directly, but you're learning from people and how they're navigating life and their careers, which is really fun for me to do.
Yeah.
Okay, so we need to have a dinner party. Maybe it has to be virtual, or you guys need to come out to Montana, because like
I want to go to Portsmouth.
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
yeah, Jason's that's been on his list for a while, because we need to talk peak performance. We need to talk meditation. There's so many like bullet points here that I want to dig into. So yeah.
I definitely found my next book to read, so I just wrote that one down.
It's great. And it's an easy read. Like, it's a fun, like, I think I got through 200 pages on the plane, and I was doing work too. So it's fast,
nice.
Super easy.
Those are my favorites. I am curious, for those that are looking for that actual mentor, maybe they're younger in their career, like, do you have any tips of how to engage someone to be your mentor and how to continue keeping them engaged?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really before engaging someone, I think it just starts with trying to figure out who you are and what you want. And that's a really difficult question for younger people to answer. And I still don't know what I want to do 5 or 10 years from now. I have some ideas, but an easier exercise to go through is really thinking about, like, what would a perfect day look like? And assume, like, you haven't, I know a lot of people fantasize about winning the lottery, and then they're, I don't have to work another day in my life. But I like to think if I did win the lottery, I would still work. But I think you have to think about what a perfect day would look like. What would that work look like integrated with life? And is there anyone in your orbit that is already kind of leading, doing, experiencing that you can sort of look up to? And I think it's as simple. I mean, it's harder in more remote environment, but if you're nearby someone, it's getting together for a coffee and just having a conversation, staying in touch over text. If it's someone you don't know, reaching out. I know I've done this myself. I've reached out to people on LinkedIn in the past and said, hey, I noticed we had this in common, or, you're finding that common thread, and just, saying, hey, could we sit down and chat? I'd love to learn more about your background and how you got to the point that you got to. How do you define success, and how have you become successful? And I think it's like anything else, like relationships need, they need to be fed to mature. And so everything starts with a conversation, and you've got to just continue to make those investments. And I think good things will come from it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's, look for those people that are, doing the things that you want to do at the level you want to do it. To your point, don't be afraid to reach out, like, make the ask. People are always willing to help other good people. And then to kind of pull from the reference earlier is, like, make the time meaningful. And very early in my career as an intern, I had some bosses hook me up with some people that are doing really big stuff in the space I was working at the time. And they told me one thing that I never forgot. It's like, when you meet with these guys, always be prepared. Like, be prepared to ask the questions, get the answers you want to know, have a purposeful discussion, to use your term, like, make the time meaningful with a personal aspect. And never forgot that anytime that I'm talking with a mentor, having a mentor, is like, not just showing up without a blank sheet of paper, right? And kind of having some things that I want to cover and talk about if they're truly in that mentor seat. And I feel like I'm getting, mentored. What is it? I don't know.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, yeah, don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to make the ask.
Okay, so truly, Jill, we're going to have to talk again, because I could keep talking to you forever. But we are.
I really do like Portsmouth, Portland. That whole area is like the top of my travel bucket list. My bucket list isn't very extravagant because I love traveling the States, but never been to the Northeast and really want to get over there. So, I mean, like,
He's not lying.
friends with
He's been
benefits road
talking
trip. I
about
don't know.
it. Yeah. I mean, we're going on 6 years of him talking about it. So
Yeah, you definitely should. And I would actually say, I used to tell people, yeah, you can just fly into Boston and then drive up. And I mean, if you've never been to Boston, definitely do it. But I would definitely recommend, like, if you can fly into Portland and then come down the coast, that's Portland's just an amazing city, and there's so many good things along the way coming down the coast south. So lots of good stuff out here.
Sorry to
all right.
interrupt you.
Well, we'll plan our trip. Okay, so we always like to end the podcast with a little bit of a not so business question, and in full transparency to you and our listeners, we had something else planned, but then you started talking about books. So I'm going to merge two questions together. So you are deserted on a desert island, and you have you can choose two books that you bring with you. One business, because you're obviously running a business from this island, and the other is personal. Which books are you choosing?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I've never been asked this question, clearly. That's really, really tough. Gosh. I mean, I think I'd want to take a gamble and bring something new. I know that's not, I'll think of something that I would bring, but I am not someone who rereads books. Like, if I read a book, it sticks with me. And then if I want to reference back to it, like, I'm going on Reddit, I'm going on, Googling different things to kind of pull up excerpts. Yeah, Goodreads or things like that.
Okay, then let's rephrase this. Your friend is deserted on a desert island. Which books are you recommending?
All right. There is, well, first of all, I am a big Tim Ferriss fan. I don't know if you guys listen to his podcast or read some of the books. I know he's really famous for the 4-Hour Workweek, which coincidentally I think has like a little island
on the cover.
Picture on the cover. So that might be interesting. But I think Tribe of Mentors is one of his newer ones that I think it would be interesting. And why I like that one is it's very similar to talking about that other book, Hidden Genius, earlier. It's different profiles of those peak performers, right? Jocko and David Goggins and Warren Buffett and all of that. So I would definitely recommend that. In terms of I'm trying to think of the last time I read something that was fiction. I do a lot of reading of nonfiction and a lot of business books and performance books. I
don't know. I feel like Tim Ferriss can
Aurelius, like something, going back to like the Stoics or something, like meditations. Let's go with that. We're going to go with meditations.
Yeah. Nice. I love that.
Keep you sane while you're deserted.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not you're not being very empathetic with your friend. Good luck out there. Here's some books.
Keep your wits about you.
Jill, this has been tremendous. Thank you so much for the time. Really great to see you last week. Apparently we have a trip in our future. Thank you for your time today and for, all your feedback to the community, and being just like an awesome woman in the space. So truly appreciate your time.
Well, back at you, and thank you so much. And this was a lot of fun. I would be excited to do it again, and can't wait to see all the success for you guys with this in the future. So best of luck.
Thank you. Friends, we're back on the schedule. Sorry for the delay. We're so excited to be here, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks, everybody.